Welcome back to my channel, Famous and Fabulous. Johnny Depp's decision to keep quiet was not the result of defeat or fear. It was a deliberate choice based on knowledge and a deep comprehension of the characteristics of celebrity. In a time when social media calls for quick responses, where public personalities are anticipated to make venomous remarks and fight battles in the public sphere. However, Depp's unwillingness to take part was nearly radical in that turmoil. It spoke to a more profound understanding that the general outrage is short-lived, but the reality has permanence once established. Depp realized that the more loudly someone shouts in defense, they appear more desperate. Rather, he permitted the charges to float in mid-air, taking in the first blows, while systematically getting ready for a long-term strategy that would uncover the truth about his words, not the media. He said nothing every day. He refused his critics the show they desired, infuriating them as fostering an attitude of dignity that no tabloid may destroy. As the months became years, the tides started to change in ways that only a person with genuine self-control and patience could have expected. Evidence began to surface. Little fissures showing up in the apparently. His adversaries had constructed an insurmountable wall. Audio recordings that were leaked, contradicting testimony, as well as revealed machinations started to paint a new picture. One it was not consistent with the one-dimensional villain that the media had so easily accepted. Depp's quiet provided these revelations more weight. Due to the fact that he did not cloud the situation with his own sensationalism, each new development in the evidence seemed even more devastating against those who had made unfounded accusations him. The defense wasn't motivated by public pity. The defense had its roots in truth's indisputable power, meticulously uncovered throughout time. During this ordeal, Depp additionally showed a remarkable degree of individual fortitude. In private, he incurred terrible losses. His financial situation, his reputation, and even his health suffered severe setbacks. However, he displayed a man weathering in public the storm with a stoic elegance of sorts, uncommon in the entertainment industry. He didn't go to his court dates with ostentatious, yet dignified, clothed, abruptly entering the courtroom, but as a man in a desperate struggle for survival, but as a man who has been mistreated, taking back his story. His each and every appearance supported a single strong story. He wasn't present to plead for public acceptance. He was present to establish the record straight. In the end, Johnny Depp's quiet had an effect that was not no yelling match ever could. It created the world pause, reconsider, and pay attention, not to the cacophony of rumors, but to the truth that surfaced after the craze had eventually burned itself to ashes. It enabled him to change from a man who appeared to have been broken by turning treachery into a sign of fortitude, someone who demonstrated that the truth doesn't have to shout in order to be heard. By refused to get as low as those Depp didn't try to destroy him. Simply make it through. He won. In the Hollywood's brutal world, where reputation is frequently based on deception, everyone was reminded by Johnny Depp that there remains incredibly powerful in patience, in moderation, as well as in allowing the truth to gradually, steadily, and without a doubt. Talk loudly than you can lie, never would. What Johnny Depp can do maintain composure while mayhem raged. He showed a man who recognized that matching isn't the key to true triumph. The strategies of your adversary, but by standing steadfast in moral principles. As his accusers fueled the public's need for controversy, Depp stayed committed to creating an unbreakable base. All media interview in which he was chastised, each inflated headline portraying him as a villain, emerged as an additional theme in the web of inconsistencies that his crew silently recorded. He wasted no time in attempting to put an end to all rumors. He recognized that it would not be in the best interests of frantic rebuttals, but through systematic exposure. His legal staff put forth a lot of effort, carefully obtaining testimony, following testimonies, examining contradictions, and gathering evidence that, when revealed, would cause much more harm to the fake story as opposed to any impetuous public never could. When the court case started, the distinction between Johnny Depp's strategy, as well as his accusers, was blatantly apparent. Where others were dependent on feelings, public pity, and dramatic assertions, Depp depended on facts that can be verified. His proof wasn't set up to play with emotions. It was icy, hard, and terribly transparent. Through messaging, audio recordings, accounts, eyewitnesses, and sworn testimony, he broke down the allegations calmly, piece by piece, exposing the reality without theatricality. Every revelation was a burdensome strike against the delicate narrative of the adversaries had spun. Additionally, for the first, eventually, the Globe had to face the notion that they were mistaken regarding him. The story in the media that once appeared, flimsy after appearing airtight, based on preconceptions rather than the truth as well as clickbait. Depp's denial of in the court of public opinion, take revenge, increased the legitimacy of his argument in the real courtroom. He never resorted to petty or public mudslinging assaults, even in situations where it would have been simple, even warranted. Rather, he said as required, and always with a measured voice that expressed suffering, but additionally, resilience. He was not bitter in his testimony or vindictive. It was honest, unvarnished, and incredibly human. He exposed his own shortcomings without offering justifications, admitting the difficulties he had encountered, without making an effort to portray himself as a saint. This susceptibility combined with steadfast dignity that struck a chord so effectively with the general audience. Johnny didn't merely inform others that he had been wronged. He demonstrated to them hisslant tenacity and indisputable proof. While the courtroom struggles transpired, the general public started to encounter something uncommon, a real shift in passionate, not through shrewd PR efforts or viral events, but through a gradual, unavoidable encounter with reality. Individuals who had previously rejected, now Depp observed a man who had suffered defamation with unusual elegance, who'd confronted lies with compassion rather than anger, patience. When the decisions are made and public opinion started to shift in his Johnny Depp has already won the favor, something worth even more than any legal triumph. He had taken back his stale, his honor, and the silence, the unquestionable admiration of millions who had at last the true guy behind the headlines. Over the lengthy and frequently arduous court cases, Johnny Depp's, his career rebuilding attempts, were as deliberate and methodical as his methodology to get his name cleared. He didn't pursue extravagant roles or plan a large-scale public event spectacles to mark his return. Rather, he silently dipped himself in work that reflected his identity as his fundamentally an artist rather than a product. He sought out independent, motion picture concepts that enabled him to investigate characters, with characters that demonstrated depth and subtlety, his passion for narrative instead of the vacuous charm of mainstream confirmation. Through music, he expanded his partnerships with close friends and other musicians, putting forth music that felt intimate and liberated from the Hollywood machine's pressures. Heiss exhibits of his paintings in art. These illustrations provided admirers with an insight into an incredibly creative and reflective side of Depp that not many had previously seen. These decisions weren't desperate actions. Declarations of independence were made, a definite indication that he would no longer be determined by the standards of an industry that had abandoned him so effortlessly. By emphasizing passion projects rather than his public persona, Depp made up a new story for himself. Not as an embittered celebrity attempting to reclaim his return, but as a returning artist back to his origins. He reminded everyone that he was a box office star long before sensation. He had previously played music, a painter, and a role-seeking actor that pushed and motivated him, not only those that assured a salary. This sincerity struck a chord with audiences in a significant way. Admirers acknowledged Johnny Depp wasn't attempting to regain their favor with fake charm. He was just being authentically himself, and in doing so, he grew even more captivating. The pivot, the public's impression of him, didn't occur with an attention-grabbing title or a sound bite that becomes viral. It took place in silence, initially, almost imperceptibly. As more people started to doubt the story, they were so socially acceptable, media which once served as a means of his critics, turned into a stronger stage for his followers. Initiatives requesting Depp's justice hashtags and momentum in favor of him continuously grew in popularity all throughout the world. Recommendations to reinstate him in well-known movie franchises grouped millions of signatures. Fans banded together social media, art tributes, and rallies incidents that preserved his reputation in a favorable light, opposing the negativity that had previously overpowered him. Additionally, the industry started to pay attention. Brands and studios that had hurried to get away from themselves from him began to reconsider their choices as popular backing increased louder and more persistent. Silent discussions started, taking place behind closed doors, where decision-makers recognized the unquestionable change in attitude. Fellow actors, a large number of whom originally remained mute out of concern for criticism, started publicly expressing their support, extending more than just pity but confirmation of his personality and professionalism. It got more and more evident that Johnny Depp's decline in popularity had been hurried and constructed on unsteady ground, and his perseverance was paying off in ways that few could have predicted. In a society where impulsivity is the norm, indignation as well as the constant 24-hour news cycle, and Johnny Depp's unwillingness to participate became a groundbreaking spectacle. Take action. His composed perseverance emphasized the risks of a culture that is ready to condemn without comprehension. By keeping his dignity, he made others face their personal prejudices and the function of media informing stories without responsibility. Ultimately, the greatest triumph was more than just winning court cases or recovering one's career chances. It was taking back his humanity as perceived by a society that I nearly forgot. Johnny Depp appeared because genuine power isn't always audible. Occasionally, it's the silent, unrelenting dedication to authenticity and truth that leaves the most profound, enduring influence. Maybe what distinguishes Johnny Depp's voyage is so remarkable that he refused to go the simple route of victimization. Even if the world would have recognized and even anticipated that he would take it, even it would have been easy, warranted for him to display his suffering in front of the public, to elicit empathy by describing each betrayal and each unfairness that he endured. But he didn't. Rather, Depp decided to portray himself as not as someone who has been damaged by hardship, but as it tempers someone. He never denied the severe pain and grief he experienced suffered, but he wouldn't let those experiences that shaped his identity or determine the conditions of his legacy. That people connected with refusal on a certain level, more profound than just adoration of celebrities. The world is overrun with tales of storylines based on downfall and redemption, media disclosures and teary interviews. Depp's silent strength remained apart, evoking awe, instead offerty. By being resilient rather than victimization, Johnny Depp is not only preserved his career, but made it more than it had ever been before previously. He went beyond the domain of becoming an emblem of movie stardom, evidence that surviving doesn't only mean enduring assaults, but regarding protecting one's dignity in their presence. His victory was not quantified by the quantity of he may create headlines or the how much public indignation he could elicit, but in the manner that he stayed loyal to himself when everyone else attempted to compel him to tell a different story. He become a real example of able to endure injustice without letting resentment overtake you, that the worst that humanity has to offer can be faced, to provide and still come out with their soul undamaged. As Johnny Depp gets ready to enter the following chapter of his career, the outcomes of his approach are indisputable. There are returning, not as a result of his demand them, but since he regained them through tenacity and indisputable ability. Previously hesitant directors now ask for his cooperation once more, acknowledging that Depp's creative abilities have just grew deeper as a result of his struggles. The crowd has also returned, but not with the admiration that fans show passively after a pattern, but with the ferocious devotion of individuals who believe they have walked through the flames with him and arrive coming out on the other side, more united. His reappearance is not a hollow one, driven by public relations strategies. It's a real revival with a strong foundation on hard respect. In the meantime, those who originally wanted to put him down and discovered their might fading. Once their credibility, encouraged by a scandal-hungry media, has weakened not by Depp's reprisal, but via the gradual, unavoidable breakdown of their own inconsistencies. Depp didn't have to ruin them with words. He just had to put up with it. Their finally caused its own demise, strikingly different from Depp's ascent, which was accomplished with grace, discipline, having a deep comprehension of human nature. In a lot of ways, Johnny Depp's tale has developed like a timeless tale. Movie, story. The hero who died, wronged by people he trusted, confronts formidable. Despite all the odds, he never forgets his actual self. His triumph isn't ostentatious, it's quantified. It is something that is earned and enduring. He showed the world that occasionally the most effective method of combat back is not by taking revenge, but through patience. That quiet was armed with strength, and knowledge might be more acute than any kind of sword. The journey of Johnny Depp teaches us that although adversaries might produce the finest noise, those who suffer the most, quietly, honorably, and with intention, who possess the last word. Ultimately, Johnny Depp didn't merely endure the assault that was threatening to destroy everything he had constructed. He went beyond it. His voyage wasn't about attempting to regain his old splendor or changing himself to become more acceptable to the general public or the media. Rather, it was about not allowing an incredibly unfair chapter that redefines who he was vital to him. He stayed steadfastly himself. No, very carefully created a public relations strategy without rebranding exercise, no sympathy calls or sensationalism. The same Johnny Depp. Intricate, creative, reflective, and subtly rebellious. His silence can frequently be misconstrued as, in reality, passivity was an active, strong position. It wasn't only the lack of sound. The voice was full-throated, implicit statement of belief. Trust in truth, belief in justice, and possibly above all, trust in the long-haul endurance of genuineness. Depp realized something, that a large number of his detractors and even some of his peers were unable to understand. That momentary, media-shaped public opinion sound bites and online indignation are brief. Character is what survives. It would have been simple to deal with the hate, with further hate to pour into the filth and end up as yet another victim of the poisonous celebrity scandal cycles. However, Johnny Depp possessed the uncommon insight to recognize beyond the present. He was aware that genuine confirmation wouldn't originate from hashtags or headlines, but from remaining loyal to himself, allowing truth and time tooked in a way that anger and revenge never could. In the legal system, where facts, testimony, and evidence carried greater significance than rumors and stories turn, Depp battled with accuracy and take care. In the public opinion court, he battled with elegance and gentleness, being aware that emotional responses would only confirm the worst beliefs about him. In addition to both, at the quiet private court he battled the hardest for self-respect. Crucial conflict of all, protecting his dignity, feeling of self and honesty. His final triumph is not just that his name was cleaned or recovered his career, but that he came out on top, leaving the experience with his spirit unharmed while maintaining the principles that had always characterized him. About Johnny Depp, from a historical perspective, will not be merely remembered as another controversy involving celebrities. People will perceive it as a remarkable illustration of resiliency, a guide to enduring injustice without losing oneself. It's a story. It turns the conventional script on its head. Rather than a decline in status, it's ascend to a greater level of reverence and respect. His experience serves as a reminder that being alive doesn't necessarily mean battling loudest or retaliating the most difficult. Occasionally, actual survival, long-term survival results from standing firm, keeping quiet, and letting the truth must be revealed, of course. Depp's accomplishments weren't just individual atonement. It was a form, against a culture of subdued revolution, fixated, outraged, and immediately, had demonstrated that power isn't always audible, that revolt can be an act of dignity, and that when genuineness is examined, sparkles even more brilliantly. His adversaries undervalued him because, to a misunderstanding, unaware, that quiet is a sign of vulnerability was his most powerful tool. Consequently, Johnny Depp's tale lives on, not as a warning story, but as a masterwork in survival, honor, and the victorious perseverance of the human spirit in the face of the likelihood